The status of the solid waste committee at this point?
They don't, when the we had our, if you remember, we had 4 or 5 recommendations at the completion.
Mm-hmm.
We made our reports, the recycling committee made their recommendation. We went over the various options that you had before you, and it was done. It was, the task has been accomplished in terms of what we needed to report back to the board.
I think the fiscal advisory committee, for one, would be pleased if we reactivated that committee to look into something we could do long term. I'd like to do that immediately.
Well, we can put a motion.
Excuse me? If it's
Yes.
okay, what I could do is put a mission statement together for your next meeting, so that when you're taking up the vote on the fee and so forth, you could just tweak what I give you in terms of,
Okay.
give the Greg on the mission
Absolutely.
statement, so with the membership and all that, sunset clause and all that kind of stuff.
All right. So, at our next meeting, we will make a decision on the recommendation for fee change, which is $56.50 per quarter.
And I think, along
And
with that,
what are the wishes of the board on the other item?
Can I just address something with Dave?
Excuse me?
Where do we stand in terms of the length of the contract we currently have with JRM?
Another year plus a 2-rider, so it's a 3 plus 2, so we're good to go there.
That's our option to extend it 2 years?
Yes. And the costs are all associated with it, which is a good thing, because now, whatever we do to go forward, we've got ourselves this year and 2 more years guaranteed costs. We know what our costs
So that's why you're confident about the $46 increase?
Yeah. 2, we just started to meet on our, we all take for granted and we assume that we have a place that we can go with our trash. Well, that's a contract too. And that runs out in 2010. So we're negotiating now, and I mentioned Tewksbury. Most of the towns that were part of the Neswick group are meeting, we're meeting in Billerica. And I would hope that this summer, I could get back to the Greg and the board with a proposal in terms of going out 2010. And those contracts are good if we lock them in long term, like we did this one. This was 5 years. So that I would really like to get that concluded this
So
summer.
it's 3 plus 2.
The 3 plus 2 is on the hauler.
Oh, okay.
On the
Dump.
Disposal, it
disposal,
was 5 years.
like to get 5. Go out as far as we can.
Mr. Vino.
Dave, did you say that, does Tewksbury have just the recycling on this automatic thing, or is there trash on it too? Both run it?
It's automated, yeah.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, ma'am.
along with us raising the fee, especially if we decide to put a bag limit on this and visual recycling, I'd like to be able to tell people when they inevitably start to yell at us that we are starting to do something to look at a long-term solution. So I think,
So what you're suggesting is maybe we ought to decide on some kind of an end date for that, right?
well, maybe not.
I would think October town meeting. Is that ample time?
Oh,
to-
no.
No?
Oh, no, for this?
Yes.
Oh, we gotta go through a winter.
No, I'm sorry. I'm talking about changing to pay-as-you-throw. I'm not talking about the automation.
Well, I wouldn't go near pay-as-you-throw until you have some direction in terms of where you want to go with this program. If you go with pay-as-you-throw, and then you go into some automated program 3 years later, you may have to change that entirely because of the automation and the type of barrels that there's going to be available and how people are going to pay for barrels, as opposed to paying a bag fee. That's what I'm saying. I wouldn't advise very quickly going into one program where you see maybe 2 years out, you'd be changing it again.
All right.
So
Okay, they are very, that does make sense.
yeah, I just think that's the right order of the horse and the cart.
So, based on what you know today and, you know, what you'd be looking at, what kind of time frame are we talking about?
Well,
If we were to make it
I would say, I would say, put 18 months.
18 months.
You'd have to get through at least one winter. You'd have to let them, all these towns, complete one fiscal year under this contract. What are their issues?
It's that new? Oh, I was
Oh,
unaware.
yeah.
I was
It's
unaware it was that
it's
new.
brand new.
All right, I'm sorry, I
Oh.
misunderstood.
So, at least, the mission statement, I probably would put out 24 months, on or before.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Gentleman in the back.
Yeah, John Rogers, 39 Tower Hill Road,
Hi.
member of the recycling committee. It seems like there are two different issues. I mean, one is the mechanics of trash collection. I understand why we'd want to wait on that. That certainly makes sense. But I also understand the point that I think were also brought up in the last meeting about fundamentally a flat fee is not fair, and it's not, I can understand why it might be a transitional way to do it, but I think the idea of laying a path so that people can see a path toward something that's more fair, a pay-as-you-throw hybrid system, makes sense, apart from, and I think it can be separate from the mechanics of actually picking up the barrels and dumping them in the truck. So
Well, the
I don't
difference-
think it makes sense to wait on moving in that direction, on laying the groundwork for understanding what that would mean and even setting a goal
Well,
in terms of
excuse me, John. You're gonna go out, and you're gonna set up a contract to buy bags, implement bags, sell bags, whatever we have to do financially and from the DPW end to get that system in place. And then in three years, you go automated, because Allied and the competition is banging on your door and they say, we can make cheaper contracts. We got one driver in a truck that can buy, bang, bang, bang. And this is what you can do. Oh, well, but all the bags, all that goes away, and now we're gonna reinvest in barrels. And how are those barrels gonna be paid for? Are they gonna pay by a fee? I don't have all the answers to those things, but as I think this out, not just that it's, pay for what I use, I'm just trying to think of being financially sound and all the other issues that we've discussed, from financially sound, operationally, a clean community, whatever, and setting up a program that can sustain itself for, as we see out. And I disagree with you, John. I think there's a clash there.
I,
Yes, John.
I see it differently. I mean, I don't think there are a whole lot of sunk costs in printing up bags. That, I think any sort of automated system, given that at least a third of the towns in Massachusetts are on a pay-as-you-throw system, any sort of automated system to really roll out is gonna have to be compatible with a pay-as-you-throw. It's gonna wanna be compatible. So I think, whether it's a question of, what the actual physical mechanism is, that's something that would have to be worked out. But again, I think these are fundamentally different. One is establishing a system that is fair, or moving toward that, not by July 1st, because we acknowledge that's not possible, but having a way clear to that sort of system so that people can see, even as their trash fees are going up, they can see a path toward eventually being able to control their costs to the benefit of their finances and the towns.
Well, I think then that reinitiating the solid waste committee and having them take a look at this and come back within some reasonable time frame with some recommendations, taking into consideration a direction that we may have no choice but to follow going forward. It may not be this year, it may not be next year, but if this technology is moving in that direction to eliminate, the additional labor required in the process of pickup, I view that as a savings that
Yeah.
we should be looking at. Maybe we don't want to be an early adopter of that kind of a system, but at the same time,
Right, exactly.
shame on us if we ignore it. At the same time, the fairness issue constantly comes up. It is something that I don't know if you can satisfy in the short term people that are complaining about that by saying we're going to limit the number of barrels and see if that forces some of these people that are perhaps not recycling to recycle. And that would even out the fairness a little bit. It doesn't take care of the person that could get away with putting out a barrel once every 3 weeks. If they wanna bear in the summer months with, you know, odors that might be generated from rotting garbage, but, I mean, this is the kind of thing that there's all kinds of opinions, and whatever decision is made, will probably make some people unhappy, and then we've gotta deal with, and I think, you know, I look at what Public Works has to deal with in terms of changing horses and managing the whole program and making it successful, so, Michael?
I have a question. Is there any way could we know if we could, from what I heard, the barrels for those automated programs are actually leased from the company that does it. That's what I actually read in the Boston Globe. And if that's true, is there any way that we could get those barrels before we implement that kind of a program? So we could essentially have people paying for a certain kind of barrel that they would have to put their trash in to collect. So it would kind of be a pay-as-you-throw program that could ease us into the kind of an automated program, because we would already have these barrels in place, and then the day that we change over, I don't think there would be as much of a transition from a pay-as-you-throw program that uses bags to this new automated program. If we could get those barrels before, and even if they change the technology and change the shape of the barrels, since they're leased, we can just have people bring them down and
At
change
least,
it over.
that's not an issue.
Mhm.
My only comment to that, Mike, would be that the
Mhm.
barrels generally, if you've seen the recycling toters we have in town hall, they're large and cumbersome.
Mhm.
For the guys that are actually manually loading them into the truck, if that thing
That's
is full
true.
of trash,
do it.
it's gonna be
That's true.
extremely heavy.
I was-
They're
it
really
was-
meant to be mechanically picked
Mhm.
up, so.
Mr. Pino?
Okay.
Sean was, well, okay.
Let's see his hand.
I think it's gonna be interesting, Dave, and to all the committees, to see that, what happens in that year in these towns that are trying it now. Because for the life of me, I can't see how, and maybe it is though, and I know labor is expensive, but it has to take at least 5 times longer to pick up the trash. I mean, 2 guys on the back of a trash truck, they move, and those trash truck move. But when
true.
you gotta pull the truck up, line it up, however they do it,
Right.
pick it up, dump it. I mean, they could literally do 3 houses on the back of a trash truck by the time they do 1 house with the automated system. It's gonna be interesting to see how they, if it works, if it saves money. I don't see how it can, I really don't.
Won't be paying as much
You
labor.
think about 3 guys on a truck, moving versus the automated, I agree with you.
Yeah.
But for a big company, when you're looking at paying, I mean, look what they did with the postman. They put them all on those, they drive. They don't walk their mail routes anymore, they drive. They drive from 100 feet to get out. In other words, that works. It expedites whatever they gotta do in the mail system. Well, evidently, this saves a lot of money, because for every truck, there's 1 person to pay instead of 3.
Instead of 3.
And
But-
is that,
The time
How-
it takes, though, you know?
but those are the questions we need to get.
Yeah, exactly, that's what I'm saying. I'm saying that it's gonna,
Obviously, the town isn't gonna be picked up in 1 day anymore.
oh,
We
no,
used to have
no, no.
district, we used to have
You'll be-
districted, didn't we?
Well,
You'll
he
be a
said
week.
No, he said it's 4-day
Goffstown, by the
cycle.
way, was,
What?
4 days.
Goffstown, I think, is 18,000. And they, in 4 days, they pick up the whole town, recycling, solid waste, 4 days.
I believe North Reading used to be districted out, didn't it? We used to have
Yeah, right.
Tuesdays was a certain district,
Right.
Wednesday was another precinct.
Oh, yeah.
So I mean, we could set it up in a way we could do it that.
Sean?
Well, I think this new technology is a long-term plan. It's not gonna happen 2, 3, 4, or 5 years. Maybe 5 years if we're lucky, depending on the cost. I think we have to first implement the increase in the yearly fee. But I also think for the low-end users, we have to consider something in the short term that reduces their cost. I think the hybrid approach, in my opinion, is probably the way to go. Now, I hear some cost associated with that. Do we have any numbers on that? What the cost is to get the bags produced, to
Yes.
get retailers to sell?
Yes, we do, but we didn't come here prepared to go that route tonight, because we know we're not gonna do the hybrid this year. We didn't come in here with any expectation to implement a hybrid system this year.
But I think we have to be thinking,
If we already have that information, Sean, we can put that right back on the table, and if the board wants to go pay-as-you-throw, in a year from July,
That's what I
the
envision.
hybrid plan, we can put that right back